Recording in progress. Oh, are we doing all from the beginning?
In the Pop Culture Cupid podcast, we talk about how pop culture influences our expectations in relationships. I'm Alison, love coach, here to help you single people find your way back to love.
Healthy communication. I'm Michelle. I help singles embrace themselves and their singleness, as well as develop a healthy self-relationship. We bring some juicy stories from our own love lives and dating, and it gets pretty interesting. Be focused, we're going to be to the point, and no digressing.
Self-awareness. Follow, share, subscribe, enjoy.
And like and comment.
If it's shockingly bad, we just re-record another one.
Yeah. No, I think there's some good stuff that you can just nitpick. Recording in progress.
It's what, the 13th of January today, and the sun is so bright. Like,
yeah,
we recorded an episode just before. I keep moving around to kind of like fight
it's hilarious.
it.
And you know what's really funny though is that you're wearing a tank top and I'm wearing a sweatshirt.
It's so warm.
It's like usually the other way around.
It is. It's like 22 degrees Celsius.
With no heating. I think it's actually colder over here. Let me look. Actually, it's not that cold today. It was colder over the weekend, but let's see. That's not where it's 20 degrees here right now. So
yeah, but I've got the sun, like you can see it on the camera.
Yeah, so I don't have direct sunlight over here, so yeah. But you look beautiful with like the sun glowing right on you.
Thank you.
Yeah. We're not here to talk about the sun though.
We're not here to talk about sun. Today we are here to talk about drumroll, sex.
Yeah. Yeah. Flex. Sex and flings and friends with benefits and everything in between.
Yay. So I've set the timer. Let's see if we can stick to the time. We will.
That would be great.
Because I think the episode that will have just aired last week will be our first episode about sex, like where we just generally talk about sex. So we've got several topics we'd like to cover, but this one is like the funnest one. It's kind of like flings and one night stands and it's friends with benefits and just how to navigate. And I think, there's something to say, when you're a teenager, then in your 20s and your 30s and 40s and 50s and like, all these things.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
there's also like,
No, well, I was going to ask you, are you partial when you were single to having flings and friends with benefits?
Well, I've had flings and one night stands, not many. I've had a couple, but I can't like maybe 1, 2, 3. I don't know. I do not like them. It's not for me. If it is for you, that's fine. To each their own. But I was just there was this one fling that I have, which I'm not sure if to consider it a one night stand or not, but there was this guy that I met. This is another story that I'm thinking of now that's also very juicy, actually. There was this guy that I met during a Purim party. Purim is our like Halloween kind of thing where everyone dresses up and we drink a lot and we get drunk and just a lot of fun. And so I was out in town with my friend at this bar, and we met this guy and his friend, and it's just things happened, and I ended up. I can't remember if it was that night or the following night. I went home with him, and it just, I was caught up in the moment. So there was something just about, because I've never been that kind of person who just goes home with someone. I've always been that goody two-shoes who, barely ever has anywhere to go out to. But it was just like, I guess that was part of the thrill. And the whole thing itself was just subpar, especially since most men just think of themselves in flings and in one night stands and don't really know how to pleasure a woman properly. Or maybe I also didn't know how to ask for what I wanted, or both. And so it wasn't great. But I was so infatuated by him that I had to go back for more. And it was just like this, oh, it was so ridiculous. It was one of my most embarrassing things ever. And I remember my friend recorded me obsessing over him on WhatsApp, like the I think that was like the beginning of voice notes. And she recorded me. I could never listen to that recording because of how embarrassing that is, which by the way is a very good tactic to stop chasing and stop being so obsessive over someone, is to like record yourself being that embarrassing and just like the cringe, the cringe. Um, but I guess sometimes we have to learn for our own on our own skin, and I guess it really depends on the situation. But like I remember the last time I went, I went over to him a few times, and then the last time I went over to him, I was just like I felt so disgusting with myself. I went out, I just ran away. I went out to the car and I started sobbing. And I was like, this is never going to happen to me again. And so I don't know. So I'm like, maybe I'm just not the person for one night stands and flings, but it was just, I felt just, when it's completely detached of emotions and when, the other person doesn't actually care about me and it's all about his pleasure, then, and I'm doing things that I never would have done because of pressure, then no. So I went into like a little spiel over there, but
No, it's fine. It's
yeah.
interesting because this is one of the things where we are very different. Where I agree with everything, like sex with somebody who cares about you, for me is always better. Like my best partner is without a doubt JT. Like it's just he's the one I feel the most safe with. Like, and also there's there was growing there, and like I've learned my body and how to express myself, and there's a lot of that. But anyway, we're not talking about
Yeah.
long-term partners, we're talking about flings. And I when I'm single, when I was single, I was very partial to a fling or a one night stand, and it sometimes kind of I became a bit of a slut to be to be honest. Of just
You do
kind of
you and own it.
yeah,
That's good.
exactly. It's and there were sadly a couple of times where I didn't feel too good about myself.
Mm,
Um, which is a shame to be honest, and the times where I did feel a bit dirty and it were I wouldn't I couldn't tell myself like yeah, it's fine, it's just I wasn't feeling it, and that's not very good, but I'm not going to go into those. Like we can talk about those, but it's just I think we talk a lot about how to give yourself grace and things like that, and that's not the aim of today, so I'm not gonna talk about those. I will talk
mhm,
about one night stand that kind of really stands out. It was one of my earlier ones where, because there are times where that you're not, there's nothing more after it. Like
mhm.
me as a person, I knew I didn't want to go any further in that situation. Whereas there are other times where there was a bit of an inkling of just like, oh, maybe I could go further with this guy and things like that. So I'm talking about the first one, right? I just become single. I knew I didn't want to get back into a relationship. I just wanted the attention, the presence of just a man with me and things like that. I was talking about it in the post-holiday episode where I have trouble being on my own. I'm happy to be single, but I like sharing my bed. Anyway,
Yeah.
this guy, I'd seen him. I was at a club with a friend, and I saw him walk in, and I told my friend like I'm going home with this guy. Like
Nice.
I'm just I'm going home, and I was
Set my
just kind of like,
goal. I'm gonna set my goal. That's
and at
great.
the
I know what you want.
time, exactly, and at the time I was. This was oh, up to 10 years, close to 10 years ago, I think.
Are we that old?
Oh, it's
Was that old that
horrible.
things are a decade ago
And
and more?
it's maybe less than 10 years ago, but close to 10 years ago. Anyway, and I'm not going to criticize my body the way it looks today, but I was slimmer than what I usually am, and I was blonde. And I was wearing a short skirt and high heels, and I was just, you know, I was so confident in my abilities. I was just like, I knew I was in the kind of what men were looking for norms. And so I did go home with him, and it was the worst sexual experience
Ugh.
of my life. And it was just, it was, he was the like two thrust glory type of thing.
Oh
He fell
no.
asleep. He fell asleep on my hair. There was a bit, well, yeah, similar length to what it is today, and my clothes. And I was just like, this is the weirdest thing that I've ever experienced. He was probably kind of, the fifth or sixth man that I'd slept with or something. And so what I did is that I could not wake him up. Like as soon as it happened, he just fell asleep. So I dragged my clothes from under him. I took his phone and deleted myself from his phone. Like I know that he'd looked for me on Facebook and he kind of like sent me a message or whatever. I deleted my number, I deleted the Facebook history, I deleted everything. Like he could not find
Oh,
me.
that's brilliant.
And then I was just like, okay, now I need, because I drove back because I hadn't had much to drink, and well, anything to drink. I drove so I'd driven him back to his place, and I was like, oh, okay, how am I going to get out of the car park? Because he beeped me in, and I heard his neighbor kind of like waking up or something, and I was just like, oh, maybe he's leaving. So I kind of threw on my clothes, opened the door, and I was like, are you leaving? And he said, yes. I was like, okay, I need you to beat me out. And I, I could see his face of just like this girl, like it did not have a good time with my neighbor.
No,
And
no.
I ran out, and it was just, and this was like 5 a.m. or something. And I just kind of rushed home and just fell asleep. And he never found, I mean, he could not find me again because I deleted myself from his life. And then a couple of weeks later, I saw him at another club, and he was just like, "Do we?"
You look familiar.
No, he. It's not even. He knew who I was. He was just
Mm,
like, "But I'm sorry, did we go home? Because I remember, but I couldn't find you." And I was just like, "Oh,
maybe he
weird."
just thought he imagined it, the whole thing.
Exactly. I think I think because he knew, he remembered my name. He's just couldn't because my name
Oh,
has so many ways of spelling it, and he didn't remember my surname, so he couldn't find me again. Oh, okay. Now that I think of it, it was kind of shitty behavior on my part, but anyway, it was 22, 23.
yeah.
But but it's funny, and anytime I talk about, because I've had flings and one night stands like since him, but that one,
It sounds very awkward. And that's the thing about one night stands. For me, they always feel so super awkward. And I just like, okay, what do I do now? Unless I'm like super drunk and then, you just don't care about anything, which is not ideal either. So I don't know. The
yeah,
whole thing is just weird to me. And you're going over to someone's house where you're essentially dependent on him, especially in a situation where you can't even leave the car park without him beeping you out? And it's just, I like, maybe I also like the control of just like, not in the sense of like control in bed, because that, no, but the control of like my situation of having an escape route and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
not being, I don't know, it's just like I've never had, like I've had